When I met Michael, I was in my junior year of high school. We met on a blind date. He was about 3 years older than me. I was attracted to his charm. Not very many men would carry your purse at the mall, but he was one of those guys who did that. And at that time in my life, that was what I wanted. He was very smart, very, very smart. He loved working on cars. I can't remember a time that his hands were ever clean. At one point, he was gonna work for his dad in the construction field.
Working side by side was pretty awesome. He got to see another side of me outside of the home.
Michael and Margaret return home after celebrating Mrs. Temple's birthday. They're surprised to find their friend Kelly waiting for them.
Kelly needed to use our computer to get a money transfer. So we walk inside to my bedroom so then Kelly could use our computer for a little bit.
The three head for the basement, careful not to disturb anyone. Margaret's grandmother is asleep upstairs, and her visiting uncle is in the living room watching TV.
A couple seconds later, we hear a knock at the door. So Michael opened the door, and the first thing we saw was a pistol coming through a small crack in the door.
Two armed and masked men burst into the couple's bedroom.
We were in shock. The two guys took Michael over to the safe and asked him to open it. He said no. So then they threatened me. He still said no. And then fight or flight just kicked in, and I started fighting the guy who was in front of me. He started hitting me in the head with the butt of the gun, and I saw stars. I was just doing my best to stay conscious and fight for my life. As I'm fighting, I hear what sounds like two pots being hit together.
What Margaret hears isn't pots and pans, it's gunfire.
The guy that was fighting me ran off. So I went over to check on Michael, and he was down on the floor by the back door. He had a hole in his chest and in his thigh, just leaking blood.
The man who just shot Michael now aims at his next target.
I vividly remember him raising the gun. I feel like I can still see it in slow motion of him lifting up the gun. It felt like he had it right to my forehead. And I remember looking past it to him, and he was wearing all black. The only thing that I remember seeing was these bright eyes in like a sea of black. And I just closed my eyes thinking I was dead. When I opened my eyes, both of them were gone. Michael was on the floor with pooled blood. He was coughing, he could barely talk. But he told me that he stabbed the guy. He just kept saying that over and over before he lost consciousness.
Kelly runs upstairs and calls 911.
I got a phone call from home from my supervision who advised that there had been a home invasion, a robbery gone bad. Suspect had shot Michael twice, and he had to be taken up to our shock trauma with life-threatening injuries. Once we got Michael out of there, we searched the area. It was snowing heavily, so we're looking for footprints or any type of other evidence. The first thing I remember noticing was blood near a light pole.
After Michael was shot in the leg, he pulled out a knife that he had in his pocket and he stabbed the suspect, who then shot him in the chest.
We began to follow that trail that went out from the basement up into the front yard to that light pole, and then it stopped. So we believed that would be where whoever was stabbed got into a vehicle and left the area.
A neighbor tells police he heard the gunshots and moments later saw a silver truck speed away.
We immediately contacted hospitals in the area in the hopes that maybe he went there to seek medical treatment, but we learned that no one had come in at any of the medical locations in our area. If you were to go to the house for the first time, you would obviously go to the front door, but these individuals went to the side door.
We figured it was someone that knew the victim because they knew exactly where to go to.
We recovered 357 SIG cartridge casings in the kitchen area, and we located the knife that Michael used to stab the suspect underneath the dresser area. I remember as I went down to the bottom of the stairs and I looked to the right into this bedroom, I remember seeing a safe in the closet. Right away I thought, if there's a safe involved, is that what these guys were looking for?
He was losing touch with his inner strength. His body would have these little seizures, and I think each time there was a complication, he just lost a little bit more hope. He had a light about him that just made me want to be around him all the time. But he just started losing touch with me. A year into caring for Michael, he saw the emotional toll that it was taking. One day, he just came to me and told me that I have to go. I have to go and find my own path.
As the years pass, it becomes clear that Michael isn't getting any better.
I contacted his friend Chris, and Chris told me that they already had the funeral and that I wasn't allowed to go. So I didn't get to say goodbye.
Because Michael Jr. didn't die initially, I think the case lost a lot of its steam until the autopsy revealed that the cause of his death were injuries sustained from that home invasion. That is what turned this from an assault to a murder investigation. And I think that is what changed the tempo in trying to get the word out about solving this case.
Our evidence coordinator, Craig Robinson, had read an article about a company saying they're doing some cutting-edge stuff with DNA analysis. We can basically take an unknown profile and phenotype it so they can give you what most likely the person would look like.
To create this portrait of a killer, genealogists used blood left on the knife that Michael used to stab his attacker.
I couldn't recognize his face, but he did have the bluish eyes.
We never told the company that. So once I saw the sketch, I felt these guys are obviously legit.
Anne Arundel County investigators released the computer-generated snapshot of Michael's killer. Detective Collier holds out hope that genealogists might get a result from a radical new investigative tool they've been developing. It's called reverse genetic genealogy.
When you are doing investigative genetic genealogy, instead of going backward in time, now you've got to come forward in time. We were able to find different connections that all zeroed in on one family tree. And that set of parents only had one son.
We were kind of shocked. So we pulled up a picture of this guy and wow, look at his eyes. This could be our guy, this could be our killer.
His name is Fred Frampton Jr., and he looked like the snapshot generated with a DNA profile 3 years earlier.
He lived in the area. He was the right age. And he did have prior police contact up until 2010. From 2010 on, this person had no more police contacts.
With no prior felony convictions, Frampton's DNA never made it into CODIS.
And we learned, still to that day, he had a silver truck registered to him, which, again, a neighbor said they saw a silver truck fleeing the scene.
Then we ran to see if he owned any guns, and he owned a .357, which is the same caliber of the shell casings that we found next to Michael Temple that night.
Police arrest Fred Frampton Jr.
Once he discovered that we had his DNA, his whole demeanor did change because he knew that it was over.
And from there, he confessed to everything. He said Michael Temple pulled out a knife and stabbed him, and he goes, once he stabbed me, then he goes, I shot him.
Frampton admits he's the killer, but claims the home invasion wasn't his idea.
He admitted that it was his friend Jonathan Ludwig's idea, and he was the one that he did the home invasion with. Jonathan Ludwig was a client of Margaret and Michael Temple. So it was a targeted home invasion. He stated that at that time, him and Jonathan were inseparable. Jonathan Ludwig knew exactly where the safe was, knew that they should have drugs and money in the safe.
Unlike Frampton, Ludwig will never see the inside of a courtroom. He died of a drug overdose 7 months earlier.
The most shocking part was knowing that the murderer was actually working with Mr. Mike after the incident for a number of years. I can't imagine the feeling, knowing that he could have looked his son's killer in the eye every day.
He actually trained Fred Frampton and Jonathan Ludwig on his construction site.
I hear this was people that worked right beside me. Somebody to do that, be that cold and calculating and just be right next to you the whole time and can see your pain and it's just unfathomable. It's just against all human nature.